Major Poop. Hello there, campers. My name is Paul Hughes. I am the Lord of Leisure, and welcome once again to my front room where, of course, occasionally you'll see me drinking tea. Yes, cheers. But not just for drinking tea, although it is clearly a priority for me. Today's video is an aftermath video. Basically, an aftermath video is where I go and watch a film at the local cinematic emporium and then come back out to pontificate upon it and ramble probably with some bullshit to all of you out there on the internet land type thing. Today's aftermath video is all about Overlord, which comes from Paramount and Bad Robot, and produced by J.J. Abrams, which is kind of a surprise because I never really associated them going into what is basically horror. I didn't really know an awful lot about this film aside from watching the trailer, which pretty much lent itself to being another Nazi zombie B-movie type thing. Now, the difference is, I suppose, is that this had the best way to describe Overlord before even going into a little bit of a plot is it's basically the beginning is Call of Duty, then it morphs into Wolfenstein. Now, if you haven't played either of those video games, what's wrong with you? But seriously, if you were to watch the film, you pretty much are going to get this, and there is a huge amount effectively of little bits picked from here, there, and everywhere of other films. You pretty much, you'll go, yeah, okay, fair enough. What this is, it's a B movie with a budget. Overlord is basically set during World War II, where a paramilitary squad is sent to destroy a German radio tower before some D-Day landing type thing on a beach and all the rest of it. Now, during the opening scene, this is where the Call of Duty thing comes in. They pretty much set up the tone and the characters that you're going to have. You've got pretty much every stereotype going, with the wisecracker, the rookie, the guy who just wants to fiddle around with his camera and basically looks like a geek, and then the lone wolf, disgruntled person who has seen too much, but also knows too much, but does whatever, I don't know. Basically the explosive expert in this. They're the team sent down to destroy a church tower, which is basically blocking signals. In order for the invasion to go ahead during World War II, they have to destroy this church tower to unblock communications to allow things to happen. But along the way, they go into this village. There's a little village outside this church in somewhere Shire land in France, because obviously, why not? Well, it kind of makes sense given, D-Day landings and everything. But in essence, they meet a quite strong-willed lady called Chloe, who then hides them, in essence, from the Germans in their house. But it seems that something's wrong with her aunt, to the point where all she does is... And if that doesn't fucking telegraph something wrong from a billion miles away, I don't know what will with this. But slowly but surely, you get to see that this German radio tower blocking communications in the church, that's not the only thing going on there. And as time goes on, you pretty much see that the Nazis have been up to jolly naughtiness. In fact, to the point where they are... This is where the Wolfenstein bit comes in, and I won't go too much more into it than what the trailer's shown. They're creating soldiers that might be a little bit on the dead/alive side. What's another phrase of making that? Maybe undead? I don't want to say for sure. But in essence, obviously, it's up to an intrepid band of merry stereotypes to obviously save the day and all the rest of that stuff. Will they? You can you can pretty much make up your own guesses as to what happens. But I do want to remark about more the film itself. Now, as I said, this was a B movie on a budget, and they worked well with what they had in terms of budget. The CG isn't too shabby. There's a lot of practical effects in this, especially when it comes to the aforementioned undead, and it didn't look. It had a huge amount of gore in this, and there are jump scares and so forth, but it wasn't done shittily. It was actually something I in a strange sort of way, now having seen the film, it's not as much of a horror film as I thought it was. From watching the trailer, yes, there are horror elements and there are jump scares, as I said, but in the end, it was basically paranormal / science / World War II. Basically, that's why I invoke the thought of equating it to Wolfenstein, especially coming towards the end, because obviously in the Wolfenstein games, it dealt with B.J. Blazkowicz going up against the Nazis and doing where they were doing various occult things and doing things that were definitely outside the realms of normal scientific endeavor. So, and there's no way to escape it. It genuinely is that. And I tell you what, there are a couple of funny bits in this as well, which gives it a nice levity as well. But in a strange sort of way, not to be as much of a horror, you kind of have to attribute that to the soundtrack and the pacing of the film. They don't let things linger too long, and the music ramps up, but it keeps at a relatively constant pace, except for a couple of moments where everyone just has a nice jolly chat with each other. And it's, you know what? I have to say, there are plenty of films that have tried to do the whole B-movie, Nazi, zombie, occult, weird shit going on type thing. I've skipped an awful lot of those because an awful lot of them look shit. This didn't look shit, and I tell you what, it surprised me actually that I can actually say that this was worth watching. I'm on the fence as to whether or not I'd actually watch it again. Maybe I would. It's one of the few that possibly would push me over watching another horror film. Now, the thing is, as I said, it's not so much as a horror as some shooty bang bang stereotype type thing during World War II, but leads into some excellent action and some fun with flamethrowers and the ridiculous science type nature of things, and it in a strange sort of way, in the end, despite them, you could argue that it's just a tick list of stuff to cover off. It's done in a pretty good way. Now, a huge number of the actors, I've not seen them before in anything, so obviously I can't comment on whether or not that this is better or worse performances than what they've done previously. But the people that they had on the screen, including the SS officer, which becomes effectively the main bad guy during all this when the US troops encounter them in the village and so on. He is suitably campy evil in many respects, and you know what? I got some respect for that. Actually, there is some ham in this. Make no mistake when it comes to the acting, but it's not ridiculous. It's not. Towards the end, yes, there's a couple of moments that do become, oh, for fuck's sake, it's that kind of thing. But in a strange way, I kind of challenge people to not be on board at that point, in which case you go, yeah, fuck it, just carry on. It was a surprisingly good watch for a film that I expected to just be going all the way through because of how the trailer showed it as thus, it's actually a little bit less horrific. You know, don't get me wrong, gore and all the rest of it is certainly present, but it's not as just all scary all the time. And that, believe it or not, I appreciate in this. So, would I recommend Overlord to people? Of course, for the vast majority of people who want a, you know, it uses history to set a fantasy out where you have basically good versus evil and all the rest of it, and obviously dealing with supernatural science and so on. From that perspective, I think actually you could do worse than watch Overlord. It was, you know, the acting was actually all right, despite the stereotypes. I got on board. The pacing was actually quite reasonable, despite, you know, at times a huge amount of the film does take place in just the house where the US troops encounter the French lady. With her brother, who also is a little star in some respects, but also is in one scene an absolute dumbass. He really is. But again, I suspect that was just for some silliness. And I tell you what, Chloe towards the end as well turns into Lady Rambo, which was both fantastic and hilarious to see because of just where she goes from to in the space of 100 and something odd minutes of film. It's actually quite, it is something, but overall it was maybe it's the better way to just equate it to a haunted house when they're starting to allude to various things being wrong. But then it becomes just a thrill ride. You know, maybe that's it. Just compare it to a haunted house / roller coaster when it comes to this type of film. And I did not come out hating it. I have to be honest. Overlord, you know, I came out with a smile on my face. And so, if you're into a bit of war, a bit of sci-fi, a bit of horror, with a wee bit of silliness thrown in for good measure, and especially towards the end where it just gets even more silly, I'd actually say go and watch Overlord if you can. If you don't like horror otherwise, of course you're not going to go and watch this. But I tell you what, this genuinely surprised me, and I kind of hope that they take another chance on, you know, with something like this that ordinarily you wouldn't expect out of a mainstream Hollywood studio. It actually wasn't. It was actually good. I've got to be fair. I enjoyed it. So I'm definitely leaning towards recommending you go and watch the film at the cinema. Certainly, again, when it comes out on the all streaming things and what have you, definitely watch it then. Because if nothing else, it's definitely a good popcorn film. It was just entertaining. And I tell you what, there's been an awful lot of films I've seen throughout 2018 that I couldn't say was even that. I mean, there's some films that I've never actually done an Aftermath video for, where they've just been just dog shit awful, and I just couldn't be asked. But no, this actually, yeah, I'd actually say go and watch Overlord if you can, because I kind of hope that these smaller productions, you know, that get dotted out through the year. It's not indie. Make no mistake. This is not independent. This is from Bad Robot. So they definitely had a bit of Wonga to play with. Not a huge amount, but what they did with it was more than enough, and it didn't outstay its welcome. You know, I wasn't bored. You know, and I tell you what, even that is a goddamn accomplishment, I have to say. So there you go, campers. Overlord, it's out at the cinema now. And yeah, you know, if you get the opportunity, I would actually make sure it's on your list. So there you are. So that's it. I'm going to carry on drinking my tea now because I drank at the beginning and I didn't have another sip. You know, what's going on here? There we go. Right, I'm off for a nap and possibly to play more Diablo 3 on the Nintendo Switch. I have been Paul Hughes. I'm still probably going to be the Lord of Leisure after this video finishes. Thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you all again very, very soon. But until then, bye!